Hey, what's going on? This is the second video in a 4-video series for track breakdowns for my upcoming EP on Illegal Beats. Obviously, this is the second track in the EP called, what's the track called? It's called Pocket Note, and this one is a lot more intricate than the first one, so naturally the tutorial is going to be a bit longer. Maybe the first one was like 5 or 10 minutes, this one's going to be probably around 20. So, buckle up, we're going to do this in chronological order and then go through each of the elements in each of the tracks. Right, only place to start is the beginning, so here's the beginning. Alright, so let's break that down. What the hell is going on there? I've got this, which is Falcon. Seems to be a viola going into Particle Reverb, which is a granular reverb device from Kentaro. 100% worth it. You should get it like 30, 40 bucks. OTT. I'm automating the this parameter. Don't quite remember what it's called, but that's what it does when I automate it. It looks like that. It's the, I think it's the threshold, probably, for the expansion. That's besides the point, and then the filter cutoff. You may notice that it's in mono, or not really in mono, but close to it. The width is very low. That's what it sounds like. Also got this sound here, which is actually some sound that was recorded by the Mars rover that's currently on Mars. And then I am doing this. I think this is another Mars sample. Whatever. This intro bit, those first 4 bars are not too interesting. Then this comes in. What the hell is that? That is concatenative synthesis. And I might have talked about it before on my channel. I'm not sure. If I haven't, then probably expect a video about that soon, because it's really interesting. But basically what's going on, I've loaded in a bunch of samples or a bunch of audio into a concatenative synth. I think I was using one in Max MSP for this example, but for anything else you can use any number of concatenative synths. I think EXO, Atlas, those like sample organizers, they use concatenative algorithms to organize it. But basically what it does, it chops up all your samples into little tiny bits and rearranges them in ways that you can organize yourself. So I've taken that and done those motions with it. And I don't think I really have any way of going back to what it used to sound like, but this is what it sounds like now, and I think it sounds pretty cool. So yeah, there's that first intro section. Then does that. What the hell is going on there? Great question. Once again, I'm automating the width down so that when it does this sort of big expansion thing here, it sounds like a more of an explosion or a larger moment, especially because the sub comes in then. But the more important thing that I'm very excited about, I love this. So we have phase plant initially. I'm going to turn off all these effects because this really confuses the thing. Let's see, let me turn all these off. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to drag, I'm going to ungroup this and then group all the effects so that I can then turn them off without having to worry about automation. Bam, there we go, fantastic. That's what it sounds like. Not probably not what you were expecting. It is a really cool patch, I think. So I've got these 3 random sources and this 1 curve modulator in phase plant. And the random sources are each modulating a different thing. One of them is modulating the curve rate, or not the rate, the trigger of the curve, so that when the position of this random thing goes above a certain threshold, it's going to trigger the curve. If I could get into that stupid menu, it would be, there we go. There it is, hello. So whenever the random, if I turn this down, whenever the random passes above this threshold here, it triggers this curve, which is basically just an MSEG, multi-segment envelope generator, I think. I think that's what it stands for. So essentially, we've got random envelope triggers on the gain, random panning, and random filter cutoff for each voice. So if I were to play just a single voice, let me turn on my MIDI controller. There it is, hello. So if I play a single note, sounds like that. If I play multiple notes, each note has its own random thing. That's because of a feature in phase plant that I love called polyphonic modulation, which is where you can do this. You can generate a different random value for each voice in a patch, and that's causing it to be able to have different modulation for each voice. So when you have huge chords like this, and you combine it with a lot of effects, it can sound pretty massive. And of course, I'm combining this with a lot of other stuff. I've got this here, which seems like just some sines and some reverb going into Ableton's shifter, turning it down an octave, it seems, which is, shifter is awesome. If I turn it off, it probably sounds like this. Turn it back on. Sort of granular, not really granular. It's doing some cool things. This, using spectral blur on this one, which is a really interesting spatial device. It has a whole lot of latency, so I try not to use it very much. But when I want these really like breathy sounds, I love using it. There's this, which is the Falcon instrument from before. Yeah, so it's just a bunch of chords. It sounds like this. You may notice here that it gets really wide. That's because, once again, I'm automating the width on the master right here. It's mono for the majority of that first hit, and then when the sub comes in, it expands outwards. I think I explained that before. I had to take a break in between clips, but yeah. Then of course the sub doing sub things. Then the same movement continues for 3 more chords. I'll play the last one so it can go into the next section. Alright, so let's break this down. Everything thins out, and you basically have this one single thing here, which is actually coming from Spectral Resonator on granular mode, which is a really awesome texture, but because it has a distinct character, I try not to use it very much, because I'm afraid that somebody will notice that I'm using, oh, that's Spectral Resonator on granular mode. Wow, stupid, but I'm taking this input and feeding it through Spectral Resonator with a MIDI input, and I'm using this as the MIDI source. Which, you know, if I unmuted that, it'd probably sound pretty stupid. Of course, going to compression, reverb, as you do. And this next section here is when things really start to get serious, when things ramp up. I've got more concatenative resampling going on, right? There's this. I think I probably took a huge sample for this and chucked it into Ableton Warp mode on Beats 1/16 so that it sounded choppy, and then probably played around with the playhead. Got the sub here, sub things, whatever this is. Oh, I think this is another Mars sample. This is the sound of the Mars rover like lasering rocks. I don't know why, but that's what it's doing. The sound of an exploding light bulb, and then of course these chords, which are doing the Spectral Resonator thing to those. There's that, and then because this sub here comes in halfway through the section, then it sort of is a preface for this here. What's going on here? All right, so this is a riser that I made, which is, let's go into the patch, noise and phase distortion, and a filter. Phase distortion is what's making that noise really crunchy. So if I turn it off, turn it back on, that's what gets like that sort of vinyl distortion feel. I think that's what vinyl distortion is actually. I think it's just a fancy phase distortion. Then it's going into Rift, which is a fantastic distortion plugin, which is doing some wave shaper magic. I don't know what it's doing, but turn it off, it sounds like this. So essentially I have 2 distortions on this noise that are making it sound really crunchy and cool. Like that. That's what the riser's doing. And I've got this riser, more Mars sounds, and this. which is a pretty huge pad, but I'm doing on it. Wow, all right. I'm doing something to it which I do a lot now. Back when I wrote this track, I think this is where I first discovered the trick. Maybe it was in this exact instance, I'm not sure. But I'm automating the amount of OTT. Which, like, oh wow, what a creative thing to do. But no, it's really, really useful, especially when you have something that's more subdued like this. And you want to just explode outwards like that, especially because OTT tends to bring out the high end a lot more for the settings that I have. And then this reverse exploding light, which then goes into this section. Let's break this down. All right, well, that was a lot. What's going on? Well, first, rhythmically, this is in 11/16. 11, so meaning, if you're not really familiar with how that notation works, there are 11/16 notes in each measure, meaning there are 11 beats in each measure. So how do you count that? Right? It's like, isn't not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's probably really confusing to sort of conceptualize. So in this section here, with these ARPs, what this is doing, it's offering a way to break up that 11 feel. So if we count each time division, it's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So what this is doing, it's taking this just smattering of 11 beats and breaking it up into smaller, more digestible groups of 3 and 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I probably sound like an idiot, but that's what it's doing. That's why I'm using this repetitive motif. As for these drums here, these will go out through the rest of the piece a lot. But I'm using some pretty basic processing. May not seem like it because there's a lot of effects here. But all I'm really doing is just this vocoder. That's really what's doing it. So if I turn the vocoder off, turn it back on. I love vocoder. It just makes everything watery and yummy. Just, I want to take a bite out of that sound. Of course, OTT, EQ8, spectral resonator doing something. I don't know what. A rack by Mr. Bill, it seems. I guess I really like stuff that Mr. Bill makes. This is an EQ that compensates for the Fletcher-Munson curve, which, if you didn't know, is an EQ that our ears naturally adapt to. So frequencies in this range are going to sound a lot harsher to our ears than frequencies down here, for example. So turning those frequencies down with this EQ will make the sound naturally not as harsh and not as piercing. If I briefly turn it off, you'll hear that it's just slightly harsher and pierces a bit more. I'm doing something with hybrid reverb and impulse response, it seems. I don't even know if that's doing anything. Oh, because there's not any send. That would be why. And spiff, which is I don't even know what to call it. It's like a spectral transient shaper. It's by the same people who made Soothe, which a lot of people talk about. It's like each frequency. It's like I don't even know how to describe it. Whatever. Just the website where you can find Spiff probably does a much better job at explaining it than I am. So check that out if you're interested. As to percussion, I've taken, as for the samples that I'm using here, it's mostly frame drum samples that I've resampled. So I found about a year ago, I bought a plugin on Plugin Boutique. And when you buy a plugin, if you build up enough credits on Plugin Boutique, you get to buy or redeem them for sample packs. And I, smartly, is that a word? I luckily redeemed those points for a pack of frame drum sounds, which I use all the time. And these are those. If you're wondering if frame drum is like taiko drums or doumbeks, which I talked about in the previous video. I love frame drums, percussion in general, because I play percussion, if you didn't know. So there you go. There's that percussion. Now what's this section going on about? What's this? Pretty much the same thing, except here I'm adding a sub. right, what's going on here? Probably a lot of automation. Oh yeah, that's a lot of automation. So, oh god, I don't even know where to start with this. Seems like just a saw and a sine being set into parallel filters, meaning each oscillator is sent to a filter in this pocket seasoning rack. I don't know what the hell this is. I definitely didn't make it because I've never put emojis in a macro name before. Tangent, if you want to put emojis in something and you're using Windows, then you press Windows period, and you get this fun little menu. You can search up emojis. It even works with special characters like this and these faces. I think Lenny is in here somewhere. Let's see if I can find Lenny. Where are you? Oh, come on. Ah, there's no Lenny. That's disappointing. Oh, is there? It's gotta be. Come on. Whatever. I'm completely distracted. But that's a cool thing. So we can have a cool icon because this section's cool. Yeah. Jesus Christ, I am so distracted. I was talking about the sub. Yes, okay. I think I finished talking about the sub. More percussion. What is this? Seems like I'm automating up the course on a shifter. Oh my god. I don't want to do that. Probably it's going to lag my computer. I'm lighting the course up on a shifter to get that sort of sound on that. The exploding light bulb again. I think looks like I'm using that as an impact at the track. A new synth comes in as this sort of timing defining melody to give progression. So if I, just as an example, if I put this synth back in and deleted these two, the transition between these two sections isn't really as cool, in my opinion at least. And then if I put it back to how it was, it's more progression. It's got more stuff to listen to. Right, well, what's this next section? What's going on here? This is when this main melody gets used. I think it's for the first time, or is it? It is not. Looks like it gets used here as well. But the point here is that I'm using a lot simpler sounds. So notice I have just this basic saw pluck. That's literally all it is. It's just a saw going into a filter. Nothing too fancy there. And I've cut the percussion. I think it's the same percussion here, actually. But I've just chopped everything up so it's really tiny. So the transients are really small. I think I heard a Minecraft sample. Yeah, that's totally a Minecraft sound. I think it's the menu click button. Doing that. I should explain that probably. So I think that's coming from this sound. What I do to make those sort of upwards movements, I will take a short sample like this, consolidate it, and with Live Enhancement Suite, which I will link in the description, you have a macro called, I like to call it duplicating, because the shortcut is Control B. It duplicates something 7 times. I usually do this twice, consolidate that once again, put a fade on it, consolidate that once again, and reverse it. So you get something that sounds like that. It's a really useful trick that I use sometimes for risers. It looks like I use it here. With the amp effect, for whatever reason. What's going on here? That's real goofy. I think I'm looking. Oh my gosh! All right, let's expand all this automation real quick. It seems I'm automating a bunch of parameters down and up, so it's just extreme. It's extremely stupid and goofy. And all the stuff in this section, I think, is just reiterated from the previous 3. This honestly is one big section, but I felt like since it's so dense, I should cover it in smaller parts. All right, then this next section. What's going on here? Okay, there's not really much to break down here. I've got these chords as accents, which is the same synth as over here, just in a higher register and for a very short period of time. So you only get like little tops of the sign going into all the granular delays and stuff and the signal processing chain garbage, whatever. And I've got this bass here, which is the same sub as here, but I'm automating more parameters on it. In this sort of thing, I find that automation is really important. I talk about this a lot, but it's just so important to have movement in patches, because if you don't, it just sounds bland and gross and ugh. So I love doing automation. Let's see. What is the automation? Oh, what's going on here? Right when I scrolled past that, it lags. Oh my god. I love that. Okay, so I'm using these chords. Phase plant being basic. Some signs. And then it goes into this. So this is where my history and bass music comes in, because I love doing that. This is the bass patch here. Let's break this down. What's going on? I'm gonna ungroup all the effects like I did before, and group these so that I can turn them off with one switch, like that. All right. What's the basic bass patch sound like? I'm gonna bet it sounds really lame. Yep. It's just a saw wave. Ooh, with a slice EQ. Whoa, fancy. I'm going to turn these effects on one by one and try to explain what they're doing. So, saturator. Louder. Disperser. Well, this is not really a disperser. It's a bunch of EQ3s in series. But because an EQ3 is meant to be really low CPU, when you stack a lot of them, then it creates artifacts. And the frequency low and frequency high macros are mapped to each one. This is actually, I should also reference my Swarm Effects tutorial, because this is exactly that. But that's what it sounds like. I have a shaper, which is a modulation tool. I don't know if it's being mapped to something, but it seems very slight. It doesn't affect anything. The sound is modulating a parameter later in the chain. I have a wider, which is a free effect from Polyverse. Just makes things wider, and I think I've discovered what the shaper is modulating. It's modulating the width of wider, which makes things sound a bit wider. And here's the vocoders. This is where the girth comes in. Girthy. I've talked about vocoders before in this tutorial. I'm not going to explain it. It's just girth. All right. OTT. Of course, doing OTT things. And this is where all the melodic happenings are. I've got 3 parallel chains. This is a dry chain. This is that chain, so it seems only the high end of whatever I'm feeding into this vocoder, and that's the mid-range. So if I put these together, then you get the full, I don't know, color bass experience. I don't know. Seems I'm taking audio from the track 11 Bells Twinkle. Sounds like this. Yeah, seems like it's being resourceful. These are pads from the intro. And I guess I just took the input from them using the same chords as the intro and put them to a bass. With these settings on vocoder, I have the release down pretty short so that you get the clickiness of the bass, but you still have the chord energy. And of course, the formant for the high one and the formant for the low one, whatever. Okay, and then Terry. This is Terry. That's Terry. And then EQ8, turning up the sub, and Pro Q. Doing that, because obviously this was a very necessary EQ that I had to put at the end of this chain. All right, that's the bass. Let's talk about everything else going on here. I've got this kick. Once again, I'm using a kick from the Eli Derp Patreon. And it's just a kick. I don't know. It's establishing the sort of the heartbeat of this section. because, you know, since it's in an odd meter, there's no way for just have to 4 on the floor. I can't have straight rhythms. So we have to come up with a way to have a regular meaning repeating rhythm that you can rest on for the rest of it. I've got these drums down here. Doing that is this pattern from before. I think it's right here. But with some more transient shaping on it. And I have this fill here at the end, which I think I blatantly copy-pasted from somewhere in there, whatever. And it's the same thing for this second repetition right here. Let's go into the next section. All right, first I want to talk about this transition. Here it sounds kind of like a doorstop. You know those like spring doorstops? In my house, we had one behind the bathroom door, and I would sit there for probably upwards of 30 minutes just flicking it. This is what that's doing. I'm using a delay somewhere. Yep, this echo. Of course, I don't even want to open up the automation. I'm just turning up the feedback and very quickly automating the delay time down so that you get the sound with the delay taps. Now I realize I had this sample here in the wrong spot because before starting this recording, I opened the project after probably about a month and a half, and some of the samples were missing because I have recently cleaned up my sample library, and I guess I deleted some of them. Whatever. But this one, the only replacement sample I could find was reversed, so that's why that sounded weird. Ah, much better. Whatever. I'm not even going to save this project, but this is a Foley impact from some sample pack. I don't know why I deleted it. But here, let's go into this bass patch. It's essentially the same like bass, but I'm using some more effects to create the sort of jabbing sound and some more automation. Maybe not automation. I don't know what I'm doing actually. I have yes, of course, Volcano 3. So what I'm doing here, there's a feature in Volcano 3 where you can send MIDI signals to an envelope and have the envelope triggered by the MIDI. So because this bass is just 16th notes, I can send that MIDI to an envelope in Volcano and have it trigger every time a note triggers. So you get that filter curve. If I put this filter back up, that's boring, it's stupid. Oh, that's much better, more textured. It's nice. And multipass doing its thing. I have a limit. have a limiter on the high end. Spiff, I mentioned this before. More transients and reverb for some reason. Probably to transition into the next section, I would guess. Speaking of the next section, Alright, there's not really much to unpack here. It's the same concept as the intro. I think it's almost the exact same. But I've got some more sound design. So I have this, which, believe it or not, more Mars samples. This is the rock laser thing again. I've got a riser, probably just a reverse reverb tail of something, and this. I think this is probably the raw MudPy for the concatenative stuff I was talking about earlier. I'm just using that as a transition element, it seems. Yeah, I mean, that's about it for this section. Let's go into here. Alright, well, I want to go over this first. This is the exact same melody from here and here, but slowed down to half speed. And in two voices. What's this doing? Spooky, I like that sound. But the point is, this is a sort of a slower, more laid-back section from everything else before it, because, you know, it can't be busy all the time. And of course I have these pads. These are the same pads as this, with the cool phase plant modulation thing. And then it goes into this. Okay. So this here, the main thing is it's going like, that's because on a lot of these tracks, I'm automating a bunch of parameters in that way. So I've got these curves that are moving like that across, let's see, how many tracks? That one, a lot of them, because I wanted to sort of carry that motion up into this impact here, which I think due to the file issues I was having, doesn't sound like it should. It should now. Yeah, all right. But that's what I was doing. I also added in, I switched up the melody here because it can't be the same melody the entire time. That'd be boring. So of course, you gotta switch it up a bit, do whatever that is. And I bring in the grouping thing here. Of course, slow down to half speed. Oh, it looks like now that I'm in this track that I'm doing something kind of interesting with this rack here. I've got this Max Relive device called Doom Compressor, which is pretty, this name is pretty descriptive. The name actually comes from a Mick Gordon live stream where Mick Gordon was showing off some of the stuff that he was doing in FL Studio. No, he hasn't used FL Studio. What am I talking about? He was using Ableton, but he was talking about a patcher preset he made in FL where it was a Doom compressor, sort of, where it just turned everything up from like negative 200 decibels or something ridiculous like that all the way up to 0. And because this Max Relive device emulates that, it's just a ridiculous compressor. So I've got this in a rack, and I'm automating the chain. I don't know what this is called. I think it's like a fade of some sort. I don't know, but I'm switching between the wet and the dry, so that you only get some of the compression. I think some would call that parallel compression. That's exactly what it is. Parallel compression. There we go. All right. Okay. For that next section, I just want to go over here. This is more Mars shit. How do I get it to sound like that? How does it sound tonal? I'm using Corpus. Corpus is a physical modeling effect. It simulates you're putting the sound through a physical resonator. So what's a good example for this? You know, like when you yeah, okay. So when you're like drinking water or some sort of liquid, whatever it may be, from a larger cup, and you make sounds, and it sounds like it's sort of in a space. The cup resonates with a pitch. That's what Corpus is doing. It's simulating the metaphorical cup that you're drinking in. That was a horrible metaphor, but I hope I got across the point that I was trying to make. And I'm automating the dry wet up in the transpose, whatever, blah, 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 blah. It's simulating a pipe. There's a few different algorithms that I like. I'm using the pipe here so that it slowly gets more and more tonal into this section. What's this? Nothing. What's this? It's a reversed impact. What's this? Transition. I am automating the format up on the vocoder. I am automating, what else? The coarse tune on the shifter. Probably some other stuff. What else? Honestly, I think that's the main thing. Back to this Mars Rover thing. I have Stranular going. I talked about Stranular before, I think. It's just an amazing granular effect. More down the chain, I tried, so this, all right, this is kind of funny. I tried making a Max Relive device about 1.5 years ago. It went very poorly because it ended up looking like this and I never finished it. But this function here still works. It's basically just a noise oscillator and 3 other sine oscillators that you can turn on. If I turn this on, it'll probably sound, I don't know, I have no idea what's going on, but, oh, it's probably the vocoder, actually. Yeah, that's I guess I know why I didn't finish it now, but it's just basically what I'm using this for is a noise oscillator. And I'm automating the amplitude of that up. And of course, in a dry chain, reverb. Okay, let's go into this next section. The last section, second to last section. All right, this is just a bunch of risers. That's it. All right, what's this next section? What's going on here? I feel like I say what's going on here a lot, don't I? It's like a thing that I say. Yeah. I don't think there's anything that I could say about this section that I haven't already said before. Yeah, I guess that's it. There's really nothing else for me to say. Except for one more thing. Panning. I'm using panning everywhere in this track. If I go into here, I have automation on a lot of the panning on this track, 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 on this track. Whatever. I don't need to go through all of them. You can see, you have eyes. You can see red dots, little tiny red dots. If you're watching a phone screen, probably can't see those little tiny red dots. Maybe I want to zoom those in. Wow! I need to stop getting distracted. Oh my god. Yeah, automating panning, especially in this track. It's everywhere. Just these weird movements. Don't think there's anything else that I could really show off with this. Maybe I'm forgetting something. I'm definitely forgetting something, but hope you enjoyed. Stream the EP. It should be coming out in a few days if it hasn't already. Subscribe, please. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.